from our State House studio in Montgomery. I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal, and welcome to the beginning of our nightly coverage of the Alabama legislature, as it is set to begin the 2025 regular session tomorrow. Each year during the session, Capitol Journal goes to nightly programming, bringing you the latest on what happened in the legislature at 10:30 Monday through Thursday after your local news. Of course, our weekend review episodes air Friday nights at 7:30 and Sundays at noon, so you can catch up on the week that was here in the State House. The fun begins tomorrow with Governor Kay Ivey's State of the State address to the legislature. Of course, we will be carrying the governor's speech live here on Alabama Public Television. Our coverage begins at 5:30 with some pregame coverage, if you will. The governor's speech is scheduled to start at 6 o'clock. That typically lasts 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how many times people stop for applause. And our coverage will go until 7:30 with the Democratic response and then some reaction on it all to finish up the evening. And we'll have a very special guest here in studio Tuesday night. Miss America, Abby Stockard, has been invited by Governor Kay Ivey to attend the State of the State address. The Vestavia native and Auburn senior will stop by our set before the speech to talk about her platform advocating cystic fibrosis awareness and the importance of young people being engaged in government. I hope you'll join us for this special night with a very special guest. And a reminder of the legislative schedule we are about to embark on. After session begins on the 4th, we will have legislative budget hearings on February 5th. That's when various state agencies present their budget requests to lawmakers. We will again have 2 spring break weeks this session, for the first week of March, the first being the week of March through the 14th, and the second being the week of March 24th through 28th. Under the Constitution, the legislature has 105 calendar days to meet for 30 possible legislative days. That means the last possible day of the session is May 19th. So, what issues might the legislature actually tackle this session? Well, addressing violent crime, especially in cities, seems to be at the top of everyone's list. Addressing illegal immigration at the state level to complement what federal authorities are doing will also be a hot topic. And there's always the budgets, the Education Trust Fund and the General Fund, which are the legislature's primary responsibilities. But they also might need to borrow more money for prison construction and decide whether or not to maintain a larger than expected tax cut passed a few years ago. Specifically, on the crime issue, we recently caught up with House Speaker Nathaniel Ledbetter to get his thoughts on what we might see the legislature do.
Well, I think we'll have a package of about 9 bills. We finished that up yesterday as far as what it looks like. We kind of put down, as we were talking about the structure of time, how we want to get it out. We want to get out, what we'd like to do is get them out before the first break, and I think we can. So we've been working on those for a number of weeks now, and certainly the governor's staff and my staff have worked closely together trying to come up with a package we feel like would be good for our state. One of the things, Todd, over the last few years, we've been blessed in Alabama with the growth. We've created over 80,000 jobs with investment over $50 billion in our state. But the concerns we're having is the violent crime in our state may slow that down or may halt it. I mean, if you're in this area where that's going on, it hurts your property value, it hurts retail sales. I mean, statistics show that. That's not just us saying it. It shows that. It hurts us.
It's depressing. It's a morale thing, right?
It is. It's depressing, as far as the community and the state and people that wants to move companies into your state, they see that. They get reluctant because of it. So we thought, they've put the task force together here in Montgomery. Secretary Taylor and Sheriff Cunningham, along with the city, has done that and have done a tremendous job, and it's working. And so we've had several meetings with them, and they have been at the table when we've talked about these issues. We've had the Sheriff Association, the League Municipality, the County Commission. Everybody's been at the table, and I couldn't compliment the governor's staff more because they have been engaged with us from day one when we started this package. And it's like I told the governor, she'd come up to my district. We had lunch one day. I said, it doesn't matter about the credit. I said, you can have the bills that we work on because what matters is that we get it accomplished and we're able to slow down crime in our state. And I think it's a good package. I think we will.
With former Senate President Pro Tem Greg Reed now serving as Alabama's Secretary of Workforce, the Alabama Senate is preparing for a leadership transition. The Republican caucus has already nominated Senator Garland Gudger to take Reed's place, and Gudger's election is all but certain, thanks to the GOP's supermajority. But Democratic leaders have also voiced their support for Gudger. Senate Majority Leader Steve Livingston says the transition reflects unity within the caucus and a leadership approach distinct from past leaders. And while this session's agenda may not be as aggressive as last year's, he says lawmakers are ready to get to work.
It is my intention to nominate Senator Gudger as pro tem when we meet next week. I think it's my job, number one, as majority leader, but number two, to show the unity inside our caucus is still there. The question to me was, do you anticipate a more Dale Morris approach or a Greg Reed approach? And my answer to that question was, I think it's going to be a Steve Livingston approach, how we're going to run the body. So I think in this instance, we're going to see a Garland Gudger approach, and it's going to be different than Senator Morris or Senator Reed, either one. And it's just a matter of let's get in and get started and moving forward. So we don't have an aggressive agenda like we did last year. And a few of those things that were truly Republican issues, I don't see any. Obviously, there's going to be something that pops up that surprises, like IVF last year. But I feel really good about our where we are getting ready to go into our session. Like you said, we've got the first 2 weeks. We're going to do 3-day weeks. Got to get the ball moving somehow or another,
One of the first bills filed ahead of this legislative session is Senate Bill 1. Which aims to provide workers' compensation coverage for educators, something most state employees already receive, but teachers do not. Republican State Senator Sam Gavan of Huntsville is reintroducing his bill after it fell short last year, mainly due to concerns about higher than expected costs. Another key priority for Gavan is ethics reform, as he works with his House colleagues to clarify Alabama's ethics laws while ensuring they remain strong.
A lot of people are surprised to find out that while we do have workers' compensation coverage for state employees, we do not have it for our education employees. So that's my number one priority, is pushing that through. We almost got it done last year. We did make some changes, made some compromises along the way, but we'll be moving forward with that one fairly aggressively. I have the support of the Speaker on that once it gets to the House. It moved through the Senate really quickly last year, and then we had some hiccups there. I think people don't realize how many people in the state are covered by the ethics law. And so that's one of the things that we want to, try to deal with some of the traps that are in there without weakening the law to really protect the people. So that's something we'll be working on.
When it comes to the Alabama House of Representatives, their two respective leaders are former college athletes with competitive spirits. That means you could see a little bit of defense, a little bit of offense from both, though there does seem to be some middle ground between Republicans and Democrats.
We've got certain things that are being challenged, and women's rights are being challenged, and we've got to figure out what is a woman by law, and that's unfortunate we have to do it. But stuff like that, we've got to, make sure that those women are protected with our libraries, not having inappropriate materials in front of minors. We need to make sure that's taken care of. There's so many things that we shouldn't have to address, but we have to address. So those are the things that I personally, and I've got the bill where a person can't dress kind of in opposite sex in a sexual explicit manner in front of minors. I think that's very important. We've seen that take place throughout our state several times, and it's time for us to end that.
We've been really focusing on the issues that impact Alabama, and some of the issues that are in dire need that needs to focus in Alabama at the federal, national level are not necessarily priorities to them. And so we're only prioritizing things that are impacting the communities and the people that we represent. We don't have a cookie-cutter approach to it. We are focusing based upon data and what's going on in our local community and how communities and how it's impacting it. And so we don't get our instructions and our platform from the national level. We focus and come up with the platform based upon the needs of the state. And so we don't really engage in whatever's going on at the federal level from a Democratic Party standpoint. There are issues that they prioritize, but we prioritize the issues that directly impact people within the state of Alabama.
Another issue we might hear a lot about in the legislative session is education funding, and specifically how the state might be more targeted with funding to help struggling students. State Superintendent Dr. Eric Mackey said that the state's previous investments in the Literacy Act and the Numeracy Act show what progress can be made.
Obviously, money makes a big difference. I know sometimes people say, well, money doesn't make a difference. Well, money does make a difference if the money's targeted and strategically applied. I've been very pleased to hear the legislative discussions about more funding and targeted funding. And I know the governor's working closely with them, and we've been working closely with her and her office and legislative leadership on crafting something to go forward. A lot of people have put so much time and effort into this, and I think what you're going to see and what we heard from the legislature last week is they're getting close to working with the governor and landing on a proposal that everybody's going to be pretty happy with. And I think what we're going to see is strategic investment in the areas of the state and the students who are struggling the most. And when we look at these data, the students who are struggling, it kind of all lines up. And so I think that I know as I've talked to the governor and I've talked to legislative leaders, they've made it very, very clear that they want to figure out where the biggest problems are, where the most strugglers are, and they want to target any new resources in those areas. And that makes me really happy. It makes me also very hopeful about Alabama's future because I think that's the right thing to do.
Congressman Dale Strong led a bipartisan delegation to New Orleans today to review safety measures ahead of Super Bowl Sunday. Strong visited with the site of the New Year's Day deadly terrorist attack on the Bourbon Street. He and other lawmakers also took a tour of the Superdome for a safety briefing ahead of the big game. Strong is the chairman of the Homeland Security Subcommittee on Emergency Management and Technology. He said it's encouraging to see law enforcement making preparations for Sunday.
You're looking at state, federal, local, a lot of agencies working together, a large presence of law enforcement, and this is what it takes, people working together to save Americans.
We'll be right back with tonight's guests.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next are the two staff leaders of the two houses of the Alabama legislature, Senate Secretary Pat Harris and John Treadwell, Clerk of the Alabama House of Representatives. Gentlemen, welcome and thanks for taking the time.
Glad to be here. It's just another time to start over again.
I was about to say, we always joke about, are you ready? Are we ready? The session starts tomorrow. I know that y'all's staffs spend a lot of time preparing. So, John, I want to start with you and maybe get you both to answer. When does that start, and how do you go about preparing for the big show coming on Tuesday?
That's a good question, Todd, and it really starts right after session ends. There's some wrap-up things that we have to finish up and conclude at the end of a regular session, but then we immediately start preparing and looking toward the next session. And there, as you know, there are interim commissions and task forces that begin meeting, and so staff are working those and assisting members in that process. And then we begin right away looking at our link system, our legislative computer system, and begin having mock sessions to make sure things are moving as they should. We're looking at our committee process and doing some mock sessions on that front to make sure things are flowing properly as we prepare for the next session. And then we begin looking. We probably start in about October, November, looking at our temporary staff We bring in several temporary staffers for session to assist us and to assist members. And so we begin that process to see our needs and then to be able to and ready to fill those needs.
Sounds like it never really stops.
It never does, and we've had a philosophy in the Senate from my predecessor, McDowell Lee, that what's really important to us is to maintain a professional staff, a nonpartisan professional staff that's prepared for each of these sessions as we come in, whether they're the regular sessions or the special sessions that we may have every year. So we're real pleased that most of our people are geared up and ready to go. We do fill in some spaces that have either retired or moved on to different positions, but we feel very blessed by having such a good professional staff.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Pat, because I guess it was 3 years ago, you had a new Speaker of the House on your hands.
That's right.
Of course, you had a new Lieutenant Governor a couple terms ago, but you have a new leader in the Senate.
That's right.
It's not the same in terms of the gavel and all that, but Garland Gudger will, tomorrow become the new Senate President Pro Tem, which really is the leader of that Senate body. What's that been like? What goes into helping him be successful as the new Pro Tem?
Well, the transition has been very smooth, and we've been very. I think the members and the body has been very pleased with the way that transition has transpired, with Senator Reed resigning from the Senate and taking the new position that he's taken, and electing Garland Gudger, who is has served in the body, so he understands the rules and understands how the process operates. We have gone through some tutorials about what his new role as pro tem in assigning bills and having the priority of being recognized over the rest of the members, and kind of being, I don't know whether you call it herding cats, but being the chief herder of what goes on out there on the floor.
Sure. Yeah, and there are some legal roles that he has that other people don't have in terms of the Constitution, the rules of the Senate, and all that, which is really interesting inside baseball that you may not see from the gallery that easily, but they're having to figure out all those things on the fly.
Well, he's assigning House messages, and that's his responsibility. He decides when to take out of the basket the appointments from the governor, messages from the governor, and those messages that come back and forth between two houses. Those are his decisions to when to take and what to take, and he will fit into that role, I think, really well.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things we're really anticipating is, Senator Gudger assuming that role. We are, based on what I've heard from the leaders, we're expecting a fast pace again this session, at least at the beginning. By that I mean what we call 3-day weeks to start the session, meaning, okay, maybe more traditionally, a traditional week would be gavel in on Tuesday, House and Senate, Wednesday's committee day, Thursday's another session day. So that's more of a normal, slower paced week. But when the legislature, when both houses also convene on Wednesday, it makes for a really busy state house with committees and session and all that. John, talk about the challenge that gives you and your staff in terms of keeping up with that fast pace, making sure committees are clerked and papers moving everywhere it needs to be. I know it must not be easy.
No, you're right, Todd, and there are a lot of moving parts to that. But as we begin session, it's not too difficult on us because there are not a lot of bills moving yet. But we usually will gavel in on Tuesday, then we go in Wednesday morning, we gavel in, and then we open up the journal and then give permission for committees to meet. If we don't come back at the end of that day and meet again, then committees, they're going through their process and then finalizing and getting ready to report out the bills that were heard in committee. And then, quickly we have to turn around our journal staff, our enrolling and engrossing staff. They're looking at preparation for the next day. So then they begin immediately working toward Thursday. So they really just have to it's a sped up process, but they also have to kind of slow down, pay attention to detail, and just keep things moving. And that's something that we can usually do.
So at the beginning, because let's just take this week, there won't be any bills for the House or Senate bodies to consider. They're just gaveling in. It's really just a day to introduce bills and keep the journal open, things like that. So it's not as if they're voting or anything like that, which will happen later in the session. Okay, that makes sense. So those 3-day weeks right now, maybe not such a big deal, but get into April, get into May, and it becomes a real fast pace. Yeah. Well, look, it occurs to me that all things going according to plan, that this will be the second to last session in this State House building, which is got to be a little bittersweet. Maybe a little more sweeter than bitter.
Mostly sweet.
Mostly sweet. Pat, you've shared some of the history of this building on Capitol Journal before. I was hoping you could kind of share a little bit like that in that perspective, considering that, again, timelines remaining the same, 2027 will be in the new digs across the street.
Well, we're real pleased about the progress that we've made and look forward to moving into that building. I just had some items framed today that show all three chambers, the old chamber, this chamber, the chamber we're in now, with the old columns that were still in the Senate chamber before we moved those out. And so we're real excited about the opportunity, the transparency, the ability to move around for both visitors, people that work in the building, school kids, everything else that's going to go on in the new building. So we're real happy. It's interesting now to look out and be able to look straight across, because we're laying the floor for the 5th floor where the chambers will be. The other, of course, is having the chambers on the same floor and across from each other, the way it was in the old Capitol and the way it is in probably 90% of other state capitals. We're real excited about that.
I want to ask you about that again, but John, what are the changes in your chamber are going to be the removal of those columns? And I actually don't remember, I don't go far back enough to remember Senate columns as well. But those columns right there in the House chamber, I mean, you get used to it, but man, what a day that's going to be when suddenly you're meeting and you can have a view right to the back wall there.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to miss those columns at all. I'm really excited about the configuration of the new chamber and the sight lines for every member. That's some of the process that's going into designing the House chamber, is looking at the sight line from every seat so that they can easily see the speaker. They can see those that are at the podiums debating, so that they can see the video boards, and it's going to just be completely different than what we have now in our current chamber, and gaining that extra square footage in there, as well as you know, we're on top of one another in that chamber. We're going to be able to spread out a little bit, and I think it's going to improve the efficiency on the floor.
That's what it sounds like. I mean, it sounds like you'll put a lot of thought into this.
Well, there's a lot of experience having worked in, all of us having worked in different chambers together, and looking at chambers around the country, the idea and feedback from the people who actually use the building. Again, the lobbyists, the school children, the tourists, everybody that comes through, how we can improve what we currently have and make it better for the next 50 to 100 years.
Well, I'll include the press in that too, because we've had multiple conversations. The architects have come to us about what do we need to, because obviously this building wasn't designed to be friendly to really anything like that. So we're looking forward to that, because in many ways we can be the conduit to the outside, those that can't make it to Montgomery. But one more thing about that I've been excited about in terms of the renderings are the committee rooms. We've got, that one real big committee room, got, I guess, another across the street, Star Wars kind of. But, I mean, it just looks like a game changer in terms of people being able to attend. I know we already do streaming, but it's probably going to be improved. And so much happens in committee. So many bills get altered and changed and marked up to the point where really you needed to see it in committee rather than on the floor. So talk about how important that was with y'all and the architects to make sure the committee rooms really got improved.
That was an important part of the process there, and we really took a hard dive into the committee room design and looking at accessibility for the public, and so you're going to see some major improvements there. You're going to see some improvements for members, the shape of the dais at the front, so that members aren't looking at the back of another member's head. It's kind of a semicircle shape, which is going to improve the debate process during committee. And then also, as you know, we have a couple of rooms that we don't live stream. I think, Pat, the Senate live streams every committee room, but there are a couple that we still have that we're not able to live stream from, and we're going to have full live streaming capacity in every committee room in the new State House, and we're excited about that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a big deal. Well, let me ask the question everybody wants to know: are we on target? I mean, 2027 move in for the new organizational session. Of course, really you start moving in a lot earlier than that, but are we safe to say that's still a good target?
We're on schedule. We because of probably a little bit of the weather, you may be about 30 to 40 days behind, but those are days that can be made up as the construction process goes forward. So we feel like we're on target, ready to go, both in the building process as well as what the cost will be. So we feel like we're in good shape.
Sure seems like they're moving along at a real quick clip. And I was talking to some of the architects over the weekend. They're excited too. Yep. And Dr. Bronner's excited. This is a real, meaningful project to him as well.
Well, we would not be able to do it without with Dr. Bronner's help and RSA. This would not have been something that would have come about had not they stepped in to help us.
That's right.
Absolutely. That's what I understand. Well, gentlemen, tomorrow's coming.
It's here.
Get all
it's
the sleep
here.
you can.
That's right.
But good luck. Thank you for what you do. So much happens behind the scenes with you and your staffs that really never gets a lot of public praise. But we see it and we appreciate it. And so thank you for everything, what you do, and good luck.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. Remember, State of the State tomorrow night starting at 5:30 here on APT. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.